Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
He has quite a bit on Twitter, wanted it shut down, has sort of said in the ether he would like it to be shut down. Are you confident the president or the acting attorney general is not going to shut down this probe?
Yeah, I'm very confident it'd be a disaster for the Republican Party for the Mueller investigation to be terminated or shut down or played with. It's close to the end. Let's see what he finds. I can understand why the president doesn't like the investigation. He feels wronged by it. I remember the Clinton Ken Starr episode pretty well. This is sort of standard practice, but I think most Republicans on Capitol Hill and Democrats believe that Mr. Mueller should be allowed to do his job, and I have no indication he's going to be interfered with at all.
I know you have said you would support this bill, this Mueller, essentially the Mueller protection bill. I think you voted for it in committee and the judiciary. Democrats have talked about connecting it to the spending bill. And using their votes in the House that will be needed as leverage. Do you support that move?
Not really, but I think Mitch should bring it to the floor and let's vote on it. Jeff Flake says he's not going to support judges until we get a vote on the Mueller protection bill, which I wrote, by the way. Some people think it's unconstitutional. I feel good about it. So I think the best thing the Senate could do is just bring this bill to the floor and vote on it.
Why won't the senator do that? Why won't Senator McConnell do that? He seems pretty adamant. We've had our own reporting about this. It's pretty that Senator Flake and Senator McConnell got into it a little bit. You were probably in the room. What can you tell us about why Senator McConnell is the roadblock here?
Well, he thinks it's unconstitutional. He thinks it's not necessary. Again, I helped draft the bill with Senator Booker. I think it's constitutional. I'd like to vote on it. But having said all that, I don't see any indication at all that the Mueller probe is going to be interfered with by Mr. Whitaker or President Trump. But he's the majority leader, not me. But if it were up to me, we'd be voting on the bill and see where the votes are at.
Do you think the gambit by Democrats to connect it to the spending bill, threatening a shutdown, will change Senator McConnell's mind?
Oh, I don't know. Once you give into that kind of stuff, it never ends. It might actually be counterproductive because as majority leader, they've got 1,000 demands, and if they link all of them to shutting down the government, it's probably counterproductive to threaten that, I would think.
You met this week with the new acting attorney general. A couple things. You said that it would be a mistake, a disaster for Republicans earlier in our interview here, that if they even messed with it at all. Are you confident that the new acting attorney general is letting the probe go? He's not going to touch funding, not going to interfere at all?
Yeah, I am. He said that he's going to support the regular order process. Under the law, special counsels report to the Deputy Attorney General, and any recommendations are sent up to the Attorney General, in this case, the Acting Attorney General. He said he's going to let regular order prevail here. In other words, out and try to stop the investigation.
So he's
not going to try to cut off funding.
Does this mean Rod Rosenstein still oversees Mueller?
He's in the chain of command. The initial report comes to the Deputy Attorney General, whatever the request is by the special counsel, and that goes up to the Acting Attorney General for final approval. He's in the chain of command, but the final decision making would be by Mr. Whitaker.
After meeting with him, if the president nominated him as a permanent replacement, could you imagine supporting him?
Too early to tell. He was U.S. Attorney for 5.5 years. He was Sessions Deputy for 1.5 years. He said some things that would probably be problematic to be confirmed. But having said that, I was very impressed with his attitude, his professionalism, and he's got a very solid resume. So I would encourage the president to pick somebody fairly soon so we can have a permanent Attorney General going into the first part of next year.
Does that mean not Mr. Whitaker when you say you'd like him to nominate someone very soon?
No, I mean, that's up to the president. You asked me about Mr. Whitaker. I have nothing against him. I don't know if he's the best choice. You hear about Mr. Barr, former Attorney General. That's a good choice. There are a lot of good names out there. I would just encourage the president to start 2019 as soon as we can with a new Attorney General that he has confidence in and we can get confirmed.
The fact that you name dropped the former Attorney General, Mr. Barr, does that mean that's your preference? That's your first choice?
No, it means I read the paper and his name's in it a lot. So that's all. It won't be me. Let's end with it. It's not going to be me. He's got a lot of good choices. I'm not one of them.
It is Monday, the 19th of November of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. Nothing goes to waste here, folks. We've had a very busy weekend. Lots more than we can ever discuss. But we'll put it all into a hash and maybe add a little bit of egg to bind it together. And, well, for those of you who can. And we'll just go on from there. So, River City Hash Monday. What a weekend. Hey, we all better get to work and start raking the floors of the forest. Who talks like that? Someone who has never worked a day of physical labor in his life. An hour. He hasn't worked an hour. I don't even think 5 minutes. Okay, well, people love him, though. I mean, the people who do love him really love him. Yikes. And speaking of which, it is the anniversary of Jonestown, too. Kind of weird how things all come back around in a circle. All right, well, got to rake those leaves, all right? If you just rake the forest, everything would have been better. This is really, I have to say, hearkening back to the idea of forest management from people who had no idea about forest management back in the 80s. I think in some cases back in the 70s. If we could just chop down all of these trees in this forest, we wouldn't have to worry about the fires. That's the kind of thinking that pretty much, if you want to believe part of the archaeological record, doomed the inhabitants of Easter Island. But no, don't consider that. Let's not consider using up all of our resources and finding out what we do then. God, I hate that. That's also the libertarian argument. No matter what happens, no matter what regulation that you don't have that would have prevented a tragedy, it's okay. You can just go to court later. Yeah, but that's not really nice when you're dead. Can't we, solve the problem before people feel like they have to go to court? Oh, God, it's just the thinking. What's on the rest of the menu today? Because we've got a fairly big day. At the top, Lindsey, or as I like to refer to him as Trump lickspittle, Lindsey Graham. Well, he told both sides toady Chuck Todd, yes, I'll be here all week. Well, Lindsey told Todd that Acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker is someone who impressed him because of his attitude, his professionalism, and his very solid resume. Lindsey's all about the solid resumes. You can tell. Well, on the rest of the menu in the Bistro Cafe, of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. 2 white women yogurt shop workers were scared to death of a black man who just happened to be supervising a Washington state court-ordered mother-son custody visit. So the cops they called asked him to move along. All right, America is great again. Speaking of which, nearly all of the supervisors in the Elkhart, Indiana Police Department have been disciplined, including the chief who keeps promoting them. Birds of a feather. And Sebastian Gorka. Is he registered as a foreign agent? He should be. You would think. Well, he's hosting a new Sinclair propaganda special about the rise of socialism in America. Just on the weekend, federal agents busted up a Florida neo-Nazi white supremacist terror ring, arresting almost 40 and confiscating over 100 firearms, scores of pipe bombs, and a rocket launcher. Yes, a rocket launcher. After the break, we moved to the chef's table where taxi drivers refused rides to the Proud Boys after their far-right rally in Philadelphia over the weekend. Well, we always like to get a little bit of good news. And this is, I guess, good news. At least, maybe justice will be done. Malta police have identified the masterminds behind the murder of anti-corruption journalist Daphne Caruana Galizia 13 months ago. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is the chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln, and what a fine monitoring job she does. So go there to engage, please do. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the contribute button, an integral part to this whole operation, because your generosity keeps the lights a-blinking and keeps the bills being paid. So thank you for that. If you could become a Patreon of Netroots Radio, a small recurring donation goes a long way. Thank you for that. You can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thank you, Tom. We're over there on Facebook, such as it is, because we know about Zuckerberg. Kelly takes on the duties of the Facebook Live platform, and we thank you, Kelly, for that. You can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary about 10 minutes before showtime on Daily Codes, where I am also known as Justice Putnam, because that's my name. I didn't make it up. And you can also follow the show on Facebook, and we are on Twitter at Cookbook West. You can pick up podcasts of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Okay. Well, here's another story about white women acting badly. Jeez, what is it? Black guy sits around and, not doing anything, and I guess that's scary. If they're doing something, that's scary. This is actually a bit reminiscent of those black real estate agents and brokers who were having a meeting at a Starbucks in New York, and the Starbucks manager or somebody were concerned because, there was like 3 black guys coming in. And they're just saying, no, we're waiting for somebody. We'll be with you in just a sec. and they called the cops. And while, and then even before the cops got there, their business partner showed up, who happened to be white. But they took the black guys away. In cuffs, just to be sure. And these things can turn out badly. And sometimes I wonder if that is the plan. Travis Geddes of Raw Story brings us this offering here in the Bistro Cafe at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The owner of a frozen yogurt shop called police on a black man overseeing a custody visit between a woman and her son, and the U.S. Air Force veteran said he's more sad than angry. Byron Ragland works as a court-appointed special advocate and a visitation supervisor, and he was overseeing a meeting with a mother who had lost custody of her 12-year-old son, as reported in the Seattle Washington Times. The boy wanted some ice cream, so they went to Menchie's in Kirkland, where the mother and son visited for about a half hour, while Ragland, who didn't order anything, sat nearby. The store owner, Ramon Cruz, wasn't there, but he did call 911 on behalf of 2 store employees, identified in the police report as white women, who were scared of the 31-year-old Ragland, who was also a psychology student at the University of Washington in Tacoma. They're kind of scared because he looks suspicious, Cruz told the dispatcher. All he does is look at his phone, look at them, look at his phone, and then he looks back at them. Cruz told the dispatcher that Ragland was black, but he did not mention that he had arrived with the white woman and the white boy, although the, quote, unwanted subject report that the police wrote up indicates Ragland was legally required to sit near the mother and son. They asked me to leave, Ragland said. They asked for my ID. They told me the manager had been watching me and wanted me to move along. Well, Ragland did move along with the mother and son, but he was insulted by the phrase, which suggested he was as undesirable as a stray dog. Store employees told me that he had been in the store for a while and did not buy anything, and he was not making them feel comfortable, police said. The employees were both thankful that Ragland was gone. A court-appointed supervisor, in essence, he's a cop. All right. Now, the store owner insisted the incident was not based on racial profiling and said he also experiences prejudice because he's Asian. But Ragland admitted that hearing a recording of the 911 call made him angry. Yeah. You want to stand up for yourself as a man or someone who is just doing his job and say, hey, this isn't right, he said. But in the moment, I'm thinking, I'm a black man. If I start emoting, I might not walk out of here. And so you rationalize to yourself, what's the big deal? It's just Menchie's. It's just an ice cream parlor. Just leave. But then later, you realize that you gave in, that you consented, that this is the way it's going to be, and this is the way it's always going to be. Living this kind of mental life will drive a person insane, Ragland summed up. Ken Armstrong of ProPublica brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. When Ed Windbigler became Elkhart's chief of police in January of 2016, one of his first tasks was selecting his top command staff. For assistant chief, his second in command, Windbigler named Todd Thayer. Less than 3 years before, Thayer had been demoted 2 ranks for making flippant comments about a fatal shooting. Witnesses reported that he told a fellow officer he could now check shooting a person off his bucket list. For patrol captain, Windbigler named Brent Long. Less than 2 years before, Long had received a 4-day suspension for sending inappropriate emails to fellow officers. One email included gruesome photos of a man in another city who, while running from police, jumped or fell from an overpass and was decapitated on a wrought iron fence. Under Windbigler, Thayer and Long are not aberrations, according to a review of personnel files by the South Bend Tribune and ProPublica. 28 of the Elkhart Police Department's 34 supervisors, from chief down to sergeant, have disciplinary records. The reasons range from carelessness to incompetence to serious, even criminal misconduct. 15 of them have served suspensions, including Windbigler himself, who was once suspended for 3 days in order to pay punitive damages in a federal lawsuit alleging excessive force. One officer promoted to sergeant by Windbigler has been disciplined more than 24 times, once for using police communications equipment to refer to white power. Another sergeant choked a man in custody. Another failed to report domestic violence by a fellow officer who had battered a woman and shot her cat. Still another habitually skipped mandatory training and then lied about why, saying he had been attending a police union business matter. Convenient. At least 3 current supervisors have been convicted of crimes during their careers. Convicted. 7 have opened fire in at least 1 fatal shooting. 1 officer made sergeant by Windbigler fired his gun in 3 fatal shootings in little more than 4 years, including 1 that led to a lawsuit and settlement. Another used his taser on a high school student while he was working as a resource officer, then a week later shot and killed a man who turned out to be unarmed. Walter Signorelli, a lecturer at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, said that that's high. That's high of the number of fatal shootings by Elkhart police. Signorelli worked for 30 years for the NYPD before retiring as an inspector. I don't know what kind of place Elkhart is, he speculated. From 2013 to 2017, Elkhart police shot and killed 6 people while New York City police killed 43. Elkhart's population is 53,000. New York City's 8.6 million. The NYPD had about 7 times more police shootings in a city with more than 160 times more people. Windbigler and Thayer declined comment through the department's spokesman. Was that the police union spokesman, by the way? Long did not respond to interview requests. The Tribune and ProPublica provided the police department with their findings, and a spokesman said there would be no response. Meaning, yeah, we know all about this. How did you guys find out? On Thursday, Elkhart Mayor Tim Neese called for a complete investigation of the city's police department to be done by the Indiana State Police. Well, I expect Neese and other city council members to find a few pipe bombs laying about. Isn't that how it always happens? Yes. Well, if not always. Enough that is almost a cliche. Neese made the request a week after a reporter informed him of the findings of the Tribune and ProPublica's investigation. Last week, during an interview about police supervisors' disciplinary records, Neese said obviously police officers, by virtue of their profession, they're going to encounter people under very unique circumstances. So there are going to be complaints levied against police officers when, in fact, they're just doing their job. I think that you can do your job without breaking the law, though, don't you think? Oh, well, I had to break the law in this person's neck because I was scared. Well, before Windbigler became chief, The Elkhart Police Department allowed officers with disturbing records to stay on the force, climb the ranks, or move on to other law enforcement jobs. A 1994 study commissioned by the city cited the department's reputation for brutality and its failure to rein in officers who had abused citizens, violated rights, and alienated segments of the community. Well, I don't know. Maybe that's what they get put on their resume, and that's looked at as a favorable attribute. Progress and Rob Porter of Newsweek bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. Sebastian Gorka, the former Trump aide with ties to a Hungarian Nazi party, is hosting a new must-run show for Sinclair about the dangers of socialism. The 30-minute special appears to be the first in a multi-part series which will take an in-depth look at the appeal of a system that promises equality to all and what happens when the initial enthusiasm gives way to a sobering reality. According to Media Matters, the first installment of the series focuses on democratic socialists who have been elected to the U.S., including Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Virginia State Delegate Lee Carter, as well as socialist regimes throughout history that have gone wrong and grown violent. They'll never talk about Finland, though, because they're out there raking leaves as we speak. Though I heard that Canada is cleaning up their forests with a Roomba. The special is part of a pattern of Sinclair-mandated propaganda, including alarmist terrorism reports and right-wing opinion pieces packaged as news reports from former Trump advisor Boris Epshteyn and former Sinclair vice president Mark Hyman. Earlier this year, Sinclair mandated that their local anchors across the country read a script about fake news. We're concerned about the troubling trend of irresponsible one-sided news stories plaguing our country. The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some outlets publish these same fake stories that just are not true without checking facts. Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. This is extremely dangerous to democracy. And they said this with a straight face. I think they were reading the assessment from media experts and psychologists about what Sinclair has been doing. Gorka, for his part, made his name while working for Trump. He claims to be a national security expert, but his credentials are questionable. Well, I don't know. My Trump bro made a bunch of money owning the second largest wholesale auction of autos in Southern California. Now he's an expert on forest management. Several experts interviewed by Politico puzzled over the gap between numerous military academic credentials listed by Gorka, a political science Ph.D. who unfailingly uses the title doctor. In fact, he demanded that he be called doctor. And their unfamiliarity with his work and views. Additionally, and more importantly, he is also a sworn member of a Nazi allied party in Hungary. Last year, Gorka's ties to the group known as Vietze Rand were uncovered, which, according to the State Department, was under the direction of the Nazi government of Germany during World War II. That was the group that he's affiliated with. Now, Gorka did tell various media that he has never taken a loyalty oath to the Vietze Rand, that since childhood, I have occasionally worn my father's medal and used the V initial to honor his struggle against totalitarianism. Really now? Do you click your heels in a stiff arm salute while you say that? But he also remained at the White House for months after his ties to the Hungarian Nazi Party were revealed. So while propaganda is being perpetrated by Sinclair Broadcasting about the evils of socialism, which if any government construct that becomes violent is wrong in my book, okay? And I'm not necessarily into violent socialism because all that is sharing is better than taking. You're either going to share all your stuff or they're just going to take it. Whereas, in capitalism, it is sort of like you scratch your back and I scratch mine. You scratch your back, I'll scratch mine, but at the same time, we're trying to stab each other in the back. Okay, so, I like something in the middle, like free enterprise. So while the evils of socialism are being bantered about by Sinclair Broadcasting, police found a weapons cache, including a rocket launcher and pipe bombs, in a drugs trafficking sting targeting Florida white supremacist gangs. Oh, how interesting. Well, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Middle District of Florida announced that 39 members of the Unforgiven and the United Aryan Brotherhood gang had been arrested as part of the operation. Officers seized more than 100 firearms, scores of pipe bombs, and a rocket launcher. What do they need a rocket launcher for? I don't know. Maybe they saw Heat. I think they had a rocket launcher in that movie. Boy, that was quite a spectacle, wasn't it? Well, of course, the Aryan Brotherhood is described by the Southern Poverty Law Center as the nation's oldest major white supremacist prison gang and a national crime syndicate. I would also consider them to be neo-Nazi white supremacist terror cells. But think of that, 40. And our intelligence communities just don't know how the rise of white supremacism and these domestic right-wing terrorists have come about. Actually, we know they do, but they have to say that because of the toddler in the Oval Office. All right, let's get to our break, and when we come back, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Annie Sneed.
It lives in south central Utah, and it's huge. In fact, it is thought to be the largest living thing on the planet. It's a stand of trees, a field of aspens, all clones and all connected at the roots. Called Pando, the grove was first characterized by scientists in the 1970s, and it's probably existed for many thousands of years. But now a study finds that this massive ancient organism is failing.
More than 80% of the entire Pando clone is in a non-sustainable state that has the potential to collapse and significantly reduce the size of this world's largest organism in the next 10 to 20 years.
Paul Rogers, director of the Western Aspen Alliance at Utah State University. The cause of this crisis? Herbivores, mostly deer. Parts of Pando are fenced off, but even those areas are still under attack.
Young aspen trees are so nutritious that animals really want to get to them, particularly late in the year when when the rest of the forest plants are senesced and dried up. I think that there's perhaps some very healthy ones are able to jump over the 8-foot fence.
The deer's aggressive browsing of young aspen poses a huge threat to Pando.
We see a big gap in the demography, and I often use the human analogy that this is a forest that is almost completely composed of senior citizens, and we have no mature, healthy individuals, we have no middle-aged, we have no teenagers, we have no babies. And that's a really dangerous situation for aspen because it really depends on continuous growth of the whole clone, So you should have a really diverse age structure, both in age and height structure.
The problem has largely been created by humans and our game management strategies. Rogers says those strategies need to be reconsidered if we want to protect Pando. And it's not just about saving the world's largest organism for its own sake.
Aspen here and, in fact, worldwide, harbor great amounts of biodiversity. Hundreds of plants and animals that are dependent on aspen ecosystems. In the western U.S., the lower 48, aspen, second to riparian systems, are the most biodiverse forests that we have. So another term for that is aspen is a keystone species. So as aspen goes, so do all those dependent species. So that's number one reason. Specific to Pando, this closely demarcated 106 acres or 43 hectares is something that's workable, that we can see and feel and look at and people know about or are learning more about. And so as a conservation symbol, it's like if we can't fix this one thing that has this international reputation, what does that say about our greater relationships with the earth and living compatibly with the planet?
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Annie Sneed.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labour.
This is a Radio Labour report recorded on Monday, November 19th, 2018. I'm Mark Belanger. The giant multinational Mitsubishi is trying to break a union in Thailand and illegally refusing to reinstate workers after a lockout. The Electric Consumer Products Division of Mitsubishi in Thailand locked out 1,700 workers in December 2017. The workers are members of a union affiliated to the Confederation of Thai Electrical Appliances, Electronic, Automobile, and Metal Workers, which operates under its acronym TEAM. The lockout ended in January 2018, but the company took extraordinary measures to humiliate the workers and the union's leaders. It made the workers attend a 4-day camp at a military facility to learn what the company called discipline and order. 29 workers, mostly union leaders or activist supporters of the union, have not been reinstated. To learn more about the situation at the Mitsubishi Electric plant, I talked to Samsi Kotaran, the General Secretary of the Workers' Union. I asked Mr. Kotaran to describe what Mitsubishi did to the workers when it ended the lockout. We talked through an interpreter.
เท่าที่เห็นตามภาพที่ว่าทางบริษัทจัดกิจมาทั้งหมด7กิจกรรมนะไอ้5กิจกรรมแรกนี่ก็ให้ความร่วมมือดีแต่มันจะไปแยกมวลชนได้ในกิจกรรมที่6กันนะ
So there are about like 6 to 7 activities. So and the company said like the worker had to attend all these activities. before they could be reinstated. Before the company would put its worker back to work. And the activities includes like cleaning the elders' home and to like meditate at the Buddhist temple and to do some kind of like to do like a community service, pick up trash in the communities and to go through the training where they have the like a managers to lecture the workers. So he said for this activity the workers cooperate because they thought that it would be this was the path to be back to work in the plant, so they cooperated. But he said that the two later activities, which having the like they call it like one was the leadership course, like having the like a HR firm, they call it professor, like a professor on human resource to do the training, to give lecture to this worker, and then the other one was military. It's like the military practice. So it said these two activities, that was when the union started to get divided, and then where the employers start to insert the idea that maybe the workers, what the worker did in the past, in the previous labor dispute, in the previous collective bargaining was wrong because they did not agree to the company demand. So that was when the company started to give the workers the idea that they might need to write apology letter to the worker, to the company, in order to be back in the plant.
An online campaign to support the Mitsubishi workers in Thailand has been started by Labor Start, the labor movement's news and campaigning service. You can find the petition at www.laborstart.org. And that's it. International labor news you can use. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
From UN headquarters in New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 minutes. Rohingya Muslims fleeing what the U.S. and UN have termed ethnic cleansing in Myanmar are refusing to leave refugee camps in Bangladesh, complicating a deal between the two countries to see the displaced returned home. UNICEF spokesperson Christophe Boulirac.
The overwhelming majority of refugees are unwilling to be repatriated unless their safety can be guaranteed.
For Serena Perek, a professor of philosophy at Northeastern University, the notion that the Rohingya should be sent back to Myanmar is absurd.
I remember the first time I read something like Myanmar agrees to take back several thousand Rohingya. I think I laughed out loud because it was like, well, of course they want to take them back. Like, their goal is to kill them.
How to deal with the more than 1 million Rohingya in Bangladesh is vexing the region and the world. The UN and other aid groups have praised Bangladesh for letting the Rohingya pour into the country in August of 2017. That gesture from Bangladesh proved a rare good news story as Europe and the US took steps to keep refugees away. But Perek thinks the bar for acceptable treatment of refugees is now dangerously low. So low, in fact, that Bangladesh saw it fit to sign off on a plan to send refugees back to the very killing grounds where they were systematically hunted down only months earlier.
I think one of the problems is precisely that we can't criticize countries that host refugees. We consider states to be generous just for letting refugees stay on their territory, and then we kind of turn a blind eye to what actually happens to them while they're on their territory.
Perek doesn't have a quick fix, but says it would help if the world stopped thinking of refugee crises as short-lived. The UN now estimates refugee displacements last an average of 26 years, and by that measure, handing Bangladesh awards for its refugee treatment over the last 18 months might be a bit premature. Luke Vargas, The United Nations.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. Nothing goes to waste here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. We take the whole weekend and we mash it all together and serve it up for your virtual intellectual culinary pleasure. This is a salon after all, so it's not all about the meal, okay? Though it's all about the meal. Now we're at the chef's table, so we're going to have a little amuse-bouche, and we always start with weather from around the world, and we always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 29 degrees Fahrenheit. Winter is a-coming, and it's not even Thanksgiving yet, which is, of course, this week, isn't it? Well, the winds are out of the east-southeast. We expect to have a high today of the low to mid-60s. And as I said, the winds are light and variable out of the east-southeast. They, according to this general forecast, say they're going to remain light and variable. But as I looked at a more comprehensive forecast, it looks like winds will start picking up later on tonight at about 4 to 5 miles per hour. Still light and variable in some people's assessment. But then it will pick up even more, and rain is coming our way beginning on Wednesday and probably lasting until next week. Okay, we'll take it. I'm outfitted for driving in any kind of weather right now. So we'll take whatever it is. It's the season for it. All right, so we're going to be sunny today with that high in the mid-60s, and tomorrow will be also in the mid-60s, overnight low in the low 30s. I have no pollen here that's driving people crazy, according to this. The air quality index has gone up from an overnight low in the good range, and the good range was in the low 30s. Now we're at 61 parts per million, and that is in the moderate warning range. And we are also in an active air stagnation advisory. But if we get some winds, we may hopefully blow out the stagnant air, which is people's wood-burning fireplaces and stoves, and also the fires nearby. But then the winds hopefully don't bring that bad smoke from Northern California, which isn't very far from where the mothership is, by the way. Barometric pressure is holding at 30.13 inches. Oh, I forgot to tell you the daytime UV index is in the green low range at 2. Okay, once again, barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.13 inches. Visibility is down to 7 miles, and that relative humidity is at 82%. Expecting to go up. All right, so weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. They do, around the world. And they don't really plant them like a vegetable, okay? I mean, they put them in the ground, but I guess I could have said put in the ground. I still get to pop a pea. All right, well, let's get on with it. London is 47 degrees and partly cloudy. Paris is 42 and cloudy with a weather advisory. Let's see what that is. I think it may be snow flurries. Yes, potential disruption due to snow and ice in Paris as we speak. And that's an active statement, so do take care. Okay, let's see, where are we? Oh, just drop down this right here. All right, Rome is 48 and mostly cloudy. My gosh, they have a weather advisory too. Let's see what that is. All right. And they are disrupted due to rain. Right now they're 46 degrees, and winds are variable with gusts, and a massive weather cell is coming from the southwest, moving up into Rome proper. So do take care if you happen to be in Rome. Kiev is 31 degrees and fair. Kabul is 48 and partly cloudy. Hong Kong is 70 degrees and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 53 degrees with rain showers. Sydney, Australia is 63 degrees and fair. San Francisco, California is 48 degrees and partly cloudy with an air advisory warning in toxic levels of bad air from the wildfires blowing right into the bay. And stay inside, please, people. Oh, and finishing up, New York is 47 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people they planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Mark Hand of Think Progress brings us this first offering here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. Philadelphia taxi drivers refused to give rides to members of the white nationalist Proud Boys after a rally where the far-right group was vastly outnumbered by anti-racist protesters. Videos show cab and Uber drivers who arrived after the far-right rally ended, leaving their cars empty when they were told by anti-racist protesters of their racist and neo-Nazi politics. The We the People rally, organized on a Facebook group run by Proud Boys, attracted other right-wing extremists, including members of the Three Percenters, a white nationalist militia, and people who describe themselves as Trump supporters. Really now? At the rally, the two sides were kept separate by metal barricades and rows of police. Tensions flared after a group of Proud Boys crossed a police line and confronted the anti-racist demonstrators. The group reportedly included David Kyriakose, a Proud Boy who is facing riot and assault charges over an October 12th brawl in New York City with anti-fascist protesters. Gavin McInnes, founder of the Proud Boys, was giving a speech inside the Metropolitan Republican Club in New York City while the anti-fascist protesters gathered outside. Now, of course, McInnes is a co-founder of Vice Media, but left the company in 2008. Did he now? This is completely surreal, Vice News correspondent Tess Owen wrote on Twitter on Saturday. Fascists are trying to take taxis, but the drivers keep leaving whenever they realize what's happening. Now, Owen reported that police tried to help far-right attendees leave the rally by Ubers, but when an Uber would arrive, protesters would swarm and tell the driver they were about to pick up fascists, and then the Uber driver would speed off.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Christopher Ciclunia of Reuters brings us this final offering here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. Investigators have identified a group of at least 3 Maltese nationals who they believe masterminded the killing of anti-corruption journalist Daphne Caruana Galizia 13 months ago, the Sunday Times of Malta reported yesterday. It did not reveal their names, but quoted high-ranking officers leading the murder probe as saying that their investigation was at a very advanced stage. There was no immediate comment from the police on the press report. So sources quoted by the Sunday Times of Malta gave no indication of how much longer the investigation could take or if there had been any new arrests in the case. Caruana Galizia, who penned an anti-corruption blog, was killed by a car bomb near the Maltese capital of Valletta on October of 2017, a murder that appalled Europe and raised questions about the rule of law on the Mediterranean island. And I should say we reported and commented on it here, and at least in some iteration of this show. 3 men suspected of having been commissioned to carry out the killing had been under arrest for almost a year. They have pleaded not guilty. A court documenting initial evidence against the trio has heard evidence that they allegedly planted a bomb in Caruana Galizia's car and set it off via an SMS message. How nice. The motive behind the murder remains unknown. The Sunday Times saying the investigators believe the masterminds had different motives and came together to contract the 3 men accused. Corruption is corruption, I would think. These sources would not give any indication of whether the masterminds came from the criminal, business, or political sectors. Well, aren't they all the same? Investigators were quoted as saying they were in constant contact with Europol, the EU's law enforcement agency, over the case, and in recent weeks, this contact intensified significantly as police got closer to cracking the case. We have large amounts of data that require analyzing, and partners like Europol have the necessary experience and expertise to help facilitate this process, a source told the newspaper. Well, maybe some justice will be done for Daphne, and it can't come soon enough. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. Now, you know that Networks Radio will be broadcasting on all day and all night, and we will visit with you tomorrow for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, because that's what we do on Tuesdays. So do please listen to Networks Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will visit with you right here tomorrow in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie d'un novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus d'être tendre. Les années passent, il est loin l'âge tendre, nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.